Afternoon all. Okay, let's have a look at another young super grandmaster approaching the 2700 club. So maybe one day soon, not too much in the distant future, the grandmaster from the Philippines, Wesley So, who's currently 2677, is he going to be in the 2700 club? He played a very interesting game against Georg Meier very recently in the Spice Cup. Let's have a look at it. He had the white pieces. He kicked off with e4. George responded with French defence, and now we get the classical variation. After d4, d5, knight c3, we don't get the French defence winner, which might start with bishop b4, then e5. We get instead the classical knight f6. Here Wesley chooses e5. No Alekhine Chethard attack, no bishop g5, but e5, which is a popular option, and reinforces his centre with f4. Black undermines the centre, or tries to, with c5, and then puts more pressure now on d4. White strengthens d4, and here White now prepares to castle queenside with this next move, queen d2. Black castles. Now castling queenside here is quite a common mistake I think some players with White are sometimes playing, because Black in this position would have the strong c4, I believe, and then a ready-made kingside attack, or rather queenside attack, coming at White's king quite easily. So d takes c5 I think is necessary to stop this, and now it's safer to castle queenside. We see now quite aggressive moves from Black, trying to make use of the king on c1, starting with this queen a5 plan, which is very, very dangerous and needs precision against it. So the first move, which I think we really need to check out in the second pass through this game, is a3. This is not to be taken lightly at all, this move a3, because it is offering up, for example, bishop takes a3, and the complications need to be understood. For the moment, let's imagine bishop takes a3 is not playable. Black instead plays rook b8, which seems to want to make an excuse out of a3 for a quick b5, b4 attack. Wesley takes now on c5. After knight takes c5, he plays another move which on the surface looks as though it's quite clinically correct actually. If b5, then there'll be queen takes c5, so indirectly stopping b5 here. So what can Black do if Black hasn't got b5? Okay, it's very interesting. Black tries knight a4 in this position. So in a way, if he can exchange off this knight and then carry on with the b5 plan, surely that would be quite interesting for Black to generate counterplay on the queen side. White takes on a4, now points stuff at Black's king with bishop d3. He's not too concerned about b5 here. He's got another resource which the knight leaves in its absence. After b5, White can now play c3 without the knight on c3. This is playable now. So you might think, well, what about a5? a5 might be slightly risky in this position, because also queen e3 points at the c5 square. Maybe queen c5 is a nuisance, needs to be calculated. On the other hand, queen takes f4 check. Okay, but a5 might be slow for other points of view. Maybe knight d4, hitting the knight on c6. Let's see what happened in the game. Black actually played a very energetic type of move, b4. So okay, in one way it's a pawn sacrifice, but on the other hand it's double pawns White has here. Are these actually going to be effective? Can they be undermined? Or can Black use this now to carry out strategic operation of exchanging off the light square bishops? And this bishop's usually quite bad in the French defence. So maybe Black has judged, evaluated this position as fine for him. Bishop a6 and the bishops across that diagonal. White doesn't really want to exchange it off, perhaps. It would weaken White's light square control. The queen on a6 is quite dangerous already. Okay, so bishop c2 is chosen by Wesley. After queen b5, we see another forcing move, knight d4. Well, at least forcing Black to do something about the threat to the queen and knight. Queen b6 pinning the knight to e3. The e3 queen is not protected by anything. The knight can't move just yet, apart from Okay, knight f5 might be technically possible one day. At the moment it can just be taken. The queen is supported by this stuff, but at the moment, okay, in this position though, f5 is possible, and to be able to use that mechanism of knight takes f5 protecting the queen, that is made use of here. Otherwise black is faced with being mated with f6. If g6, then queen h6 mating on the dark squares. That's a risk with this variation once f5 is played. There's also of course pressure on the e6 point, but f6 is a major threat to deal with. The queen also has the advantage of supporting e5 from earlier, so that's another great benefit of that queen e3 move. Black now though is uncomfortably forced into an exchange of queens. Remember, he is a pawn down, but it's only double pawns. Can Wesley actually make something out of these double pawns? Are they actually exploitable? So e takes f5, knight takes f5, not minding the exchange of queens. Also d5 is a bit weaker. e5 is of course weaker. We're going to have an exchange of prisoners basically. e5 for d5. So queen takes e3, knight takes. An exchange of prisoners? Not just yet. d4. Now knight f5. Okay, a delayed exchange of prisoners because d4 still seems to be dropping, or not yet. No, it's supported again. The defender is attacked, and now we get an exchange of prisoners. So it delayed, what Nimzovich would call an exchange of weaknesses, exchange of prisoners. It makes the war metaphor. So knight takes e5, knight takes d4. Okay, the centre's been cleared. White now might be considering a king move at some point. For the moment, okay, there's a little bit of dangers to be concerned about. So let's see, g6, as though f5 might be of interest to black at some point. Also the back row for the king to come out as well. So king b1, and now we see bishop c4, rook e1, and now f6. Okay, f6 supporting that knight on e5. b3 kicking the bishop to d5. Now we see bishop takes, rook takes, and now knight e6 offering more exchanges. The rooks come off now. Rook takes, rook takes. Okay, so this is the situation. Black's middle game pawn sacrifice has transitioned into this ending now, with white currently threatening, it seems, rook d8 check just to get the other rook off, then maybe try and victimize this pawn, and we have a 3-1 pawn majority. Black's a5 seems to want to knock out black's pawns. If white dares to play rook d8, then taking and then ab would damage white's pawns a bit more. They wouldn't be so powerful if it's just double pawns without the a pawn. So Wesley in this position, this is a very interesting dynamic now for the game. A very interesting dynamic turning point. Wesley goes for the double pawns on the a file. He plays b takes a5. Okay, are these really dangerous? Is this a5 pawn really dangerous here? Rook takes b3, king a2. It's attacked immediately. Maybe this is a mistake. We'll check in the second pass of this game. a6, and the rook gets behind it with rook a5. But now it's supportable with knight c7. Not only that, now there's a threat of rook d5 to get rid of that rook. And if rook a4, then king b3, and his pawn would seem to be extremely dangerous. It's only 2 steps away from queening. So king f7. Okay, and now king b3 stops even rook a4. So now rook d5 looks like a major threat. In fact, after king e7, rook d5, black is compelled to resign. So his middle game pawn sacrifice, which seems intuitively good, on greater scrutiny, I like the word scrutiny nowadays, it seems to have been proved as a fatal mistake in the endgame. But could black have improved? This was one of Wesley's key wins so far in the Spice Cup, held in St. Louis, United States of America, 16th of October 2012, so just 3 days ago. It's 19th now. Let's look again, forensic investigation begin. Okay. So white has a small advantage. How is the Steinitz equilibrium disturbed for one side to have the advantage? Where did it go wrong for black? Around equal here. Queen a5, seemingly logical aggressive move. What else would you do with the black side? Wouldn't you be tempted yourself with such an attack to get to white's king? It seems logical, black's play. Black is 2-6-4-6, should know what he's doing. So a3, let's first check out bishop a3. Takes, the checks I guess run out. King b1, check, I think there'll be a knight a2 here. So knight a2 here, and white controls b4, so is black's attack enough? Black can try knight b4 anyway to win this bishop, so queen takes b4, queen takes e3. Here probably bishop d3 is good enough, it looks like a piece up. Or more clinically, engine is recommending king b2, knight c3. It's fine, it's not what black wants. There's no, the attacking oomph has gone from black's position. So this looks unsound to play bishop a3. Okay, in the game rook b8. You might think, well, what about b5? Well, actually we can just take on b5. That surely is not on the cards. We can safely take here. Okay. So rook b8 seems logical as well. And then we see bishop takes c5. Okay. Now queen e3. Is it a power move, queen e3? It's second engine recommendation here, queen e3. So b5 is ruled out clearly. You just take on c5. So it's delaying black's attack. So did black have anything better than knight a4? In the game after knight a4, did the evaluation go up? It went out slightly actually, but with the continuation of, okay, knight a4 or b4, Wesley chooses the right path, knight a4. What did black have instead of knight a4? Let's have a look at bishop d7. Could black progress the attack like this? Say f5, queen b6. Which actually now threatens knight b3, doesn't it? Knight b3 check on that queen. Knight d4 then. Knight takes. Queen takes. Bishop c6. And now b4, another point of the a3 is revealed. If b4 is actually a useful resource. And this ending might be tiny advantage for white anyway. It's probably not what black wants. But it's a small advantage only. So in the game we saw knight a4 being played. Knight a4, and white took, and he has a slight advantage. Now b5, okay, c3. I think b4 I suspect is not really that liked, but it gives black play. Bishop a6 doesn't seem that terminal just yet, but now the evaluation is creeping up for some reason. Is there something better than bishop a6? Or not really? Now that black's committed to that pawn sack, that might be the cause, which we would intuitively suspect from looking at this game. Knight d4 might not be the most accurate. Maybe just queen d3 here. It does force off queens, because it's threatening mate and the queen. Queen d3. Let's have a look at this. This position here with a5. Now there is a technical move. B takes or rook c3 looks like the technical move to attack the knight. And now here b5, just giving up the pawn, back up the pawn. Knight d4, using the pin on the c file. And in this position king b1 looks dangerous now for being able to double. Okay, but equal on pawns, 2 to 1 pawn majority. Is that really enough for white? It looks like a very pleasant position actually. Almost half a pawn advantage. So that's interesting as well. But in the game, after queen b5, actually knight d4 was played. Okay, queen b6, maybe better, knight takes d4. Queen takes d4. Okay, and it looks as though advantage is small still. So maybe queen b6 might not have been the most accurate. f5 looks like very dangerous for f6. Now black taking on ef might not be the best either. So let's go with that anyway. Knight takes f5. Seems white advantage did increase a little bit. He does delay that exchange of d for e pawn. Now the exchange of prisoners. Okay, so bishop c4, the rook comes here. f6, and now we see b3. Maybe bishop d5 is not needed. Maybe bishop f7 making use of that f6. And this might not be so easy. It's less than half a pawn advantage. This is a very forceful game continuation, bishop d5, encouraging a lot of simplification. So simplification, more simplification. We're reaching a stage here which is tricky for black now if he hasn't got compensation here. Now on rook d8, I suspected this wasn't that hot for black. I think the advantage is suppressed quite a lot. After a takes b4, we could try a4 to try and maintain an outside pass pawn, but maybe the black king's okay here. It's a rescue situation. In this position, there's a move knight d7 to come back to b6. Okay, and black should be, perhaps black is okay here, perhaps. So in the game, instead, this is a power move. B takes f5, chosen by Wesley. The pawn is dangerous. After check, even though they look a bit ugly for the moment, they're functional. Rook b5, decisive mistake. It went up a whole unit of advantage there instead of rook c3. a6. Knight c4 does mean rook a3 is implied. a4, let's go with that. Check. Takes. Knight c7. It's slightly improved in the game continuation. Although white is still doing well, king c2 threatening king b3. Whoops. Rook d4 or rook d3. Whoops. Pardon me. So rook d4 here. I was trying to put in. So knight b6 in this position. Now, is white doing okay here? This pawn, I don't know. It doesn't look as easy as the game. Just doing some example analysis. It doesn't look as easy as the game. So in the game, it seemed black made things a bit easier with rook b5. So a6 is possible now because it's supportable with the knight. The knight's not only supporting the pawn, it's also supporting rook d5 to get rid of this rook. So black's on his way out here after king b3 because of rook d5. There's nothing much black can do. Okay. Interesting game. So the seemingly frightening queenside play that black generates in this variation in the French was neutralized successfully by Wesley. And then this interesting endgame scenario with the doubled a-pawns. The a-pawn was significant after all. It's the resources to support it that counts. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.